All right, hey, we are going to talk about the parts of a linear function. So, everything Unit 3 is all about graphing a linear function, but if we don't know the parts of a linear function, it's really hard to graph the line. So, the first thing we're going to start off with is intercepts. So, an x-intercept, so if you think of the intercept, you think of maybe football, like an interception. Okay, so when an interception occurs in football is when the opposing team crosses path with the ball and catches the ball from a quarterback that is not on his team. Okay, so think of that. Or if you are all starting to drive, it is about intersection. So, right, so intercept is also another word for intersection. So, think of a four-way stop. You've got to cross an intersection, so the roads will meet. So, if this is an x-intercept, it's where it crosses the x-axis, because it's an x-intercept. It's where the line crosses the x-axis. And in that point, it is always going to be a number, okay, comma 0. So meaning that y is always 0. Okay? So a y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. And this point is always where the x equals 0. So if you can fit that on the side of your notebook paper, but x equals 0. So, all right. So with that being said, I have a line here and it's asking for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So remember, the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. So this line crosses the x-axis at a -2. But we write that ordered pair as -2, 0. Because remember, the y value is always 0 here. Then the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So in this case, it is a +4. So how I write that ordered pair is 0, 4. All right, that's it. Right? So remember that this is going to be your x-axis. This is going to be your y-axis. All right, for a table. How do I know in a table, right? So I'm always going to look for zeros. Okay, so in this case, this is when x equals 0. And there's a 0 here in the y column, right? And so then if I'm looking for zeros, right? So if x equals 0, that means that is our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is 0, -4. And how do I know? Well, that is where x equals 0. So when you're looking for intercepts in the table, look for zeros. Okay. And then your x-intercept is when y equals 0. So in this case, it's 2, 0. And this is because y equals 0. All right. So the opposite value is 0 when I'm looking for that intercept. Okay. All right. So that's one part of a line. The second part of a line is finding slope, or what you will always see as rate of change. So slope is the same thing as rate of change. I am asking you, if I'm asking you for the slope of the mountain, I'm asking you how steep it is. I'm asking you how fast you're going to go down that mountain if we were skiing. Okay. So therefore, I'm asking for the rate that the mountain is changing, the rate that the stocks are rising, right? Or dropping, right? Rate of change is always happening in the real world, okay? And you can see it everywhere. But the rate of change, I'm asking you, how fast is it changing? So slope is the steepness of the graph. It is always written as a fraction, as the change in y over the change in x. So y always goes first. So we label this as rise over run, which is why this little graphic is here right here. We always rise before we can run when I'm asking for slope. Okay. All right. So on a graph, so if I have a graph, how do I know what the slope is? Well, you pick any 2 points. You count how many units do you rise and how many units do you run. And always go back and make sure, is it positive or negative? In an equation, as long as it's in y equals, you're just looking for the number that's with x. Okay, the number that is with x is always known as m, which is your slope of your line. Okay, so let's talk about the types of slope. So one of the slopes is a positive slope. So if you were curious ever if it is positive, look at the right arrow. The right arrow will tell you because it's pointing up. So the next kind of slope is obviously negative. Can anyone tell me what the last two slopes might be? So one of them is a line that goes horizontal, and the best way I remember this is the letter Z for 0. This is a 0 slope because it rises none. And then last but not least, we have an undefined slope, and I remember this because of the up and down and the D in the letter undefined. So undefined. Okay, so there's 4 types of slope. We have positive, negative, and then we have a 0, which goes like the horizon, and then we have undefined. Okay, so let's find some slopes. Okay, so again, if I have a graph, our steps are to pick any 2 points, count how many units they rise and run, and then determine if it's a positive or negative slope. So you must pick 2 points that fall perfectly in a corner of the coordinate grid. So in this case, I always try to go left to right. So I pick a left point, and I pick any 2 points, but always start from the left point. Okay, so I rise 1. So I rise 1, and I run 2. And this graph is positive, okay, because the right side is pointing up. So my slope is a positive 1/2. Okay, as I'm looking at this next graph, again, I picked 2 points that fall perfectly on the corner, right? And there's a lot that are kind of misleading. So the only one that actually falls in the corner is this one right here at the very end. Okay, so what do you think the slope is here, the rate of change? All right, so again, I want to make sure I go left to right. So I go to my left point, I fall 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I fall 8, my hint to you is that this slope is going to be negative. Remember, it's rise over run, okay? And if I'm going from left point to right point and I rise to go to that point, that's going to be a positive slope. Think of rising up the stairs. That's going to be a positive slope, okay? If I fall and then run to the right, when I fall down don't ever fall down the stairs, but if you fall down the stairs, you are going to go down. That's going to be a negative action, okay? All right, I wouldn't want to fall down the stairs. So then I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So because I fall, my slope is a negative 8/5. All right, last but not least, okay, if we have an equation, okay, so as long as the equation's in y equals, your slope is always next to x. It is always multiplying to x. Okay, so in this case, my equation is in y equals. So because my equation's in y equals, then my slope is just a positive 1/2. Simple as that. Very easy, straightforward. Okay, it's not 1/2 x, it's 1/2. All right, but what's wrong with this one? This one's not in y equals, but luckily for you, you guys are very, very good at doing one thing that will help us get to our slope. What do you think that is? Yeah, if you said solving for y, that is correct. So we're going to move x to the other side. So remember, when I move x to the other side, I'm going to subtract it. But I can't physically subtract those, right? So then what I'm left with is a 5y equals 20 minus 4x. If you're not very comfortable with solving for y right now, this is your time. This is your time to get a reteach. This is your time to get really good at it. We are going to use it a lot in the next 2 units. Okay. All right. Well, in the next 3 units, actually. Okay. So then after you move x to the other side, then we're going to divide. And remember, this is a positive 5 that you're dividing by, because the sign in front of y was a positive 5. So when you divide those, right, these cancel out. I don't have enough room, right? And you won't either, but 20 divided by 5 is 4. And then remember, whenever it is already with x, you just leave it in a fraction. So my slope here is again the number with x. So my slope here is negative 4 over 5. So again, if it's not in y equals, you need to solve for y. So I would put this in your notes. I don't have room, but solve for y. Okay. All right. That's it, guys. Bye.